Welcome back to another episode of Property-Pxrn Stars, the premium property podcast, brought to you by your hosts David Lindley
and I'm Matt Giggs.
And today we have a very special guest for you. Our Property-Pxrn star is a man of many talents. He's a commenter and presenter on Talk TV, on GB News. He has his own PR agency and is also a part-time estate agent, and probably the king of controversy in the estate agency industry, I would say. None other than Russell Quirk.
Hey chaps, how you doing?
Welcome to the show.
Can't believe you've had me on. How silly.
I know.
How silly. It's only just begun.
It's going to end before it starts.
So I was scrolling socials last night, as you do, and I saw something which I thought was very pertinent for today. And there was a quote there from John Caldwell, the Phones For You founder. And he was talking about PR. And he said, PR only works when it's spectacular or controversial. I thought, that's very apt for today. Which one of those two would you identify as?
Well, I think both. I'm definitely both spectacular and controversial. I don't agree with that, actually. I think if you want to do the kind of the flashy instant stuff, you remember Richard Branson when he used to kind of roller skate behind a coach and, kind of wing walk and all that stuff. Yeah, that gets you attention, but it's pretty short-lived. So yes, there's such a thing as stunt PR, whereby you can do something that grabs attention and the newspapers grab hold of it and you might get a bit of TV and so on. But it's a bit gratuitous, it's a bit fake. I think most journalists now see through it. And actually the last thing you want to do in PR is to try to force some kind of contrived fake thing to a journalist because they smell it a mile off and they just say no, so you're wasting your time. So actually, I think the opposite. So the way to harness really good PR, honestly, is to do it very regularly and very consistently. The days have gone, no disrespect to Mr. Caldwell, and obviously he's quite a well-off guy, but maybe he was a good businessman back in the day. PR's changed. The way to do it is consistently through not just trying to be gratuitous. Yeah. So doing it through being surreptitious. And actually, there's this thing, I guess, which is you've got to give in order to get, if you know what I mean. So, if as a brand you're constantly giving information, advice, and not being seen to be too salesy, too expectant, so it's not all about calls to action because PR shouldn't be that. Then, if you're providing just stuff that people want to read, so research, data, content, advice, and do it over a long period of time, you build yourself up as a thought leader, as an individual, as a founder, as a brand, and that is much more powerful over a period of time. It's what Elon Musk has done, for instance. So yes, he's very controversial. You can sit there smoking weed on an interview, if you want.
We've got that coming up later, Matt.
Yeah, well, I presume we're doing that. I presume we're doing that.
It's been a few years.
But actually, Musk has spent years, probably a decade, building his profile for the benefit of Tesla and SpaceX and so on. So, and famously, actually, talking of Tesla when it comes to PR, do you know how much money Tesla as a brand spend on marketing?
Isn't it zero?
It is zero. Everything has been done through PR and social media, mainly because of Elon Musk himself. So it shows the power of PR if it's done properly. Personal brand. And I actually think that brands should have a personal kind of flag carrier. So I think each brand should have a person behind it. I mean, all right, so you don't know who the CEO of Coca-Cola is, but I think in certain industries, particularly if they're a people industry like estate agency, for instance, I think you should have a person behind it because that then adds credibility, trust, and it's almost someone whose lapels you can shake if it all goes wrong as a consumer. Yeah. I think that's important.
So know, like, trust. But just coming back to the PR, I'm just stick on that.
Yeah,
I think it makes sense.
We'll talk about PR for as long as you like, guys. Well, let's do that.
Estate agents.
Yeah.
I mean, Simon Hawksley was on here a couple of weeks back talking about it being an entertainment kind of industry. Now that's in a slightly different context. But what I think he was saying is it's about your personality and what you bring to the table, whether it's on camera, off camera. And you've mentioned PR and what your take of it is. How do estate agents in the premium market at the moment, from your maybe more of an observatory position, how do you see the PR? Because it's a lot of big brands, and then you've got guys on the likes of Instagram, you've got, they're going from TikTok.
I suppose social media is a slightly different thing. It is almost a version of PR.
Yeah.
But most estate agents just don't do PR. No. I mean, we don't hear about Connell's Countrywide in editorial. Gone are the days for now of Foxton's being in the press all the time as an agency. And I don't just mean.
That is, though?
I don't think our industry is very good at marketing.
No.
And it's even less good at PR because PR is almost seen as something that is a luxury. I mean, it's really not. PR should be part of your suite of marketing channels. So yes, you should be doing email marketing, display ads, Google ads, social. PR underpins it all because PR is what they call earned. So you're not paying for it. It's somebody else talking about your brand or you as an individual. Well, how cool is that? How credible is that? So I think there's a lot of brands that don't get it, don't understand it. The other problem with PR is it is harder to measure. So I get potential clients saying to me, well, okay, we're going to spend this money with you over 12 months, let's say. What metrics can you prove we're going to hit over the next 12 months? And I said, well, we can look at brand search increase, we can look at SEO benefit, we do all that, but it's not as measurable as a Google ad campaign, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. Far from it. It's much more surreptitious and it's much more about building that thought leadership, that expert, that trust and credibility.
Well, I come back to Daniel Priestley or Mark Burgess quoting those guys on a 7-11-4 principle, where how many times you appear in someone's life.
Yeah.
At so many locations, so many touch points. PR's quite a more unobtrusive kind of way.
It's subtler.
It's more subtle,
Yeah.
which I think's the flavour of the market, really, if you're talking about premium clients.
It's trusted.
Credibility.
So if I put a Google ad out there now saying XYZ estate agents is the best estate agent in
around the face.
Aylesbury, it's sure, it's an ad. The same as if I stick it on a bus shelter or on somebody's website or whatever. However, if you've got, let's say, Ruth Blomfield or Hugh Graham or Deirdre Hipwell, a major property journalist saying, oh, and by the way, research from ABC says, or the founder of ABC has told us, people read that and think, well, the Times, the Telegraph, even Property Industry Eye, Estate Agent Today, Property Week, they're not going to mention someone if they're not credible, if they don't have something not just interesting to say, but something that is correct, is honest, is accurate. So PR is, and I know I would say this, but it's super important, but it's actually not the only thing that you should do.
Is it the founder of Pimlico Plumbers?
Charlie Mullins, yeah.
Is this the quote came from him where he said if he had all of his time again, he would spend 100% of his marketing budget on PR? Does that come from him or is that somebody else?
Well, no, Bill Gates was the one that famously said if I had $2 left, I'd spend $1 on PR. But no, Charlie Mullins. So Charlie Mullins really understands personal brand PR. I mean, he's still doing it, even though he doesn't own Pimlico Plumbers anymore. Yeah. But he built that business from scratch into something worth 100 million quid, and a lot of that was by him appearing on TV and doing social media and so on. The other thing to say though with PR is, and this is the challenge that I get all the time, is potential clients thinking it's instant. I mean, I've had clients that literally after a month are disappointed they haven't been on the BBC Breakfast Sofa. And you go, really? I mean, do you know that million viewers on a Tuesday morning or whatever it might be, that's a hard thing to get to, because you have to be already a bit credible and you already have to have some kind of name and trust with those producers, with the journalists, let alone the public. So it isn't an instant thing.
That's the quick win mentality.
But that's agency in the UK all over.
So people talk about being different, be consistent, and then you'll be different. And it comes back down to what we've talked about. And I think if you're giving value, giving advice, and your credibility is out there. When I started Gigs & Co, I was PR king. I was in the schools. I was on the paper being in the schools. We were very much, our PR was the best that there was around our area. And it was good PR. It was supportive PR, community PR. That was one of the reasons why people came to us.
Yeah. So with that being the case, and it clearly works. So this podcast is aimed at estate agents who are either in the premium property market or aspiring to be in the premium property market. Get my teeth in. What advice would you give to them? Because I think we've established that there is a bit of a lack of engagement in PR for one reason or another in the industry. What advice would you give to estate agents who want to engage more in PR and get their name out there, build their personal brand, become a key person of influence? How would they engage with PR? What should they do?
So I think if you're a big brand and you can afford an agency, you've got to hire an agency and do it properly, because you can then absorb that cost over multiple transactions, multiple branches or whatever. And again, famously, the likes of Savills and Knight Frank, do their research-based PR really well several times a year. I mean, and those guys have got maybe 10 in their research department. They've got maybe half a dozen writers. Their PR departments are huge. But I think if you're a smaller business, 1, 2, 3 branches, or you're an individual, so let's say you work for yourself or you work for a self-employed platform, you can do a lot by engaging with your local media. Now, as a London agent, that includes the likes of City AM, the Metro, the Standard, the Hampstead and High, and so on. But wherever you are across the country, if you were to create a bit of research, a bit of data, and write a piece around that and send it to your local newspaper, I'm not going to suggest for 1 second that journalists are lazy, but let's just say, they're not. But at a local level, let's just say there's a different standard to at national level, or when it comes to specialist media. A lot of these guys have to write an awful lot of words on a daily or weekly basis. So if you package something up, so let's say you're an agent in Cambridge and you want to get some attention, you could go to any number of sources to find some data, and you could find, let's say, the most expensive house sold in Cambridge in 2022, the most expensive street in Cambridge, house prices in Cambridge compared to the national average, house price growth in Cambridge compared to the national average. So there's 4, 5 different ideas. Yeah. You find that research, land registry, wherever, package it up, name the road, and actually maybe even go out and take some pictures of 1 or 2 of the roads that are deemed the most expensive. Send that over to your local newspaper, and 9 times out of 10, they will publish that or a version of it. So that's what I would do as a kind of budding individual agent in a town, and just keep doing it. I mean, not every week, but do it on a regular basis. And all of a sudden, you'll become very indispensable to that local newspaper because you become their property researcher.
There's a relationship beginning. But also,
but Matt, my question is, will agents bother doing that? I'm just not sure they can be asked.
Really? I went to Australia. I know you've been over there, and you've been to America as well. They take PR seriously. There's just a massive difference. One of the things I took away was, okay, so they understand personal branding, and they understand the part of that is your PR. And I think when you just talked about those 4 or 5 different subjects, I could hear your brain going, this is a really good by design, some great topics for by design.
Hyper-local, do it super local.
But then you've got the topics to then go on video. So you're compounding it in 2 ways and actually producing really good, valuable content for that.
But you see what that content is. It's not ABC limited estate agents are the best. No. It's no shitty pie charts in the window saying we're the number 1 on market share compared to agent B, C, and D. Who gives a shit, right? No one gives a toss.
They don't.
They don't care how big you are, and it certainly doesn't mean that actually you're even the most profitable.
What about if you win awards?
It depends on the award, but not really. I mean, come on. Does the consumer really care? If consumers are happy enough with your service and they recommend someone, it's going to be easy to convert that second person and get a higher fee. Simple as that. But the way to do it is you have to start at the beginning, which is with offering advice and information, like I've described. And who doesn't want to read, particularly if you've got a high-priced house in Cambridge, what the highest priced road is in your city or town. I mean, that's interesting, right? So, and it then aligns you as the expert, and the phone will start ringing gradually because people think, well, he must or she must know their stuff because they know the most expensive roads, houses in my town or city. So that's but the whole thing is about patience, and whether it's PR or anything else in agency in the UK, we are definitely, and this won't be a popular thing to say, we are definitely way behind the US, Australia, and elsewhere when it comes to that professionalisation, when it comes to marketing, and when it comes to just our expectation of, for instance, when a lead should convert. It's still true, I think, that 25% of Rightmove leads don't even get opened by the agency, the branch that they're received by. Why is that? Because they have this blanket view that, well, yeah, but most of these leads are a bit crap, so therefore I think they all are. Well, I'm afraid that, unless you start treating leads as something that they might not be good for evaluation tomorrow, and therefore a listing the next day and a sale the day after, and if that's how you see a lead, that you think it should convert into a valuation, a listing, and a sale in a week, then you're in the wrong business. But that lead might convert, and this is the scary thing, in a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years. If you have a proper nurturing database going on, Mark Burgess advocates, Iceberg, then, I mean, I'm telling you, that stuff works. But if you expect it to work
a
tomorrow, the
long
next
game.
day, it won't. Yeah, you've got to be so. And why would you not be in business, particularly if it's your business, for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? That's what you're building. You're not building a business
but are people
for tomorrow.
coming
you're building it
into
for the
this
next
sector
3 to
and
5
being
years.
encouraged to come into the sector to earn big money? So they're coming in with the mentality of, I want to take from this industry rather than provide value.
But the problem, Matt, I think, is that most agencies, big independents and corporates, they don't teach lead nurture.
No.
They don't teach, how to qualify somebody, they don't teach the attitude that there's no such thing as a bad lead. There's only a lead that might not convert this week, it might convert in a year's time.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
not taught by most corporates. I mean, actually, I'll tell you, the likes of Foxtons, who have got a huge database and lots of people sitting there interrogating that database, they are probably the exception in terms of going back into old records, old contacts, and starting to reheat those leads. But and those guys used to be brilliant at that, up until perhaps they became a bit too corporate. But most agencies don't do it; they don't teach it. So therefore, when you leave and set up your own business as a business owner, you don't know any different.
Well, do you know, it's funny. I went and met a company not too far away in London, and I say not too far away. London's quite a big place, right? But
It is, yeah.
for me, it wasn't too far away because it's in London, and it's a Paramount. And I met a lady there. She was doing a marketing team meeting, talking about the different demographics and the specifics and the kind of content that those guys would value within their business and within their database. And I think there are agents now that have really started to pick up the mantle with regards to providing value, advice, being the credibility, the authority in their marketplaces. But like you said about 5-10 minutes ago, will they do it? And they're the agents that don't tend to see the pace because they want everything tomorrow.
The eye-opener for me was when I was involved with Keller. I went to 2 of their events in the US, and a bit of it, some of it is a bit happy clappy and a bit kind of, some would say a bit cult-like. I didn't go for that. I didn't go to watch Gary Keller, in his kind of rock star outfit, jumping around the stage, telling everybody to stand up, clap their hands, turn around, put your hands on your head. None of that. I went to speak to the agents, the real agents in the bars and the restaurants, in the queues to get into the exhibition hall. And what was incredible was talking to those guys, you start to realise why there's kind of little old ladies in Albuquerque who earned $300,000 last year. Seriously, true story. I met Carl, was her name, in a queue, waiting to go to see Gary Keller, chat, $300,000. They're very proud, by the way, of what they do in terms of GCI
they are
and
very
commission.
proud.
And you talk to them about, well, how's that come about? And it's been a patient endeavour. Nurturing leads, doing loads of stuff in the community.
Yeah, they get it.
Doing a fate, all of this sort of stuff, and building. And then it starts to come good. And then you've built a great business.
But do you think that's because the mentality in those countries are of a self-employed mindset? So they're coming at it from you're all in. It's your commission, it's your earning, it's your livelihood. Whilst
eat what you kill. And
eat what you kill.
Yeah.
But in the UK, as a lot of us have been brought up in, estate agencies, corporate agency, and majority of the people that run successful businesses today have come out of those places. You kind of taught a certain way of doing it, and you've embedded certain culture principles.
But I'm going to be critical. I don't think agents are taught much at all.
No.
What are they taught? We don't want to go door knocking. Oh, that's really scary. And I don't think it works. It's a bit intrusive.
So do you think it's just mindset?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely, it's mindset.
So today,
but it's also
PR. Everything's to do with someone's.
It's mindset
thinking.
and it's graft, isn't it? It's graft. It's working pretty hard, really.
So you can really go if you was to open a premium brand today, whatever banner or whatever you wanted to be put yourself under, or if it's your own name, what would you do from the outset?
The first thing I do is exactly what I did with eMove. Dare I mention that name? Because
we want to get onto that.
I thought you might. Now you're going to ask me about that. Honestly, the first thing that I did, and bear in mind, I'd come from a kind of a political background. So I was an elected councillor. I understood kind of the journalist approach and political PR a bit. And I'd done a few things in my previous traditional business with my cousin Anthony, where we'd had some kind of accidental wins, shall we say, in PR terms. So because of the value that I thought PR, and I'm going back here to 2009, 2010, the first thing I did, and the first thing I would do again, seriously, is to engage a PR firm. Yeah. Now, people would say, yeah, but you would say that because you run a PR firm. Look, if you're a little business and you're opening up in Haverhill or Colchester, you're never going to employ us, right? Because we're thousands of pounds on a yearly basis. So I'm not saying it to try and get people that watch this to sign up to proper PR. I'm just saying either sign up to a PR agency or do PR yourself, because it's not only effective, but it's what your competitors are definitely not doing.
Yeah.
But the traditional method is to go and either knock on doors, which 99% won't.
Yeah, I would do that.
Go on social media and
do you know
hope.
what really works? And this is, look, I have been an agent on and off now for nearly 30 years. The most effective thing I've ever found, even a year or two when I was last doing it, when I was, a Keller agent, leaflets, old-fashioned leaflets. I think there's a lot of marketeers now that believe that because we're in this digital environment, it all has to be Google AdWords and Facebook ads. No, do you know what? Leaflets, particularly if you word
through the door.
if you word them right.
Yeah.
And I used to find the tactic, and I don't want to be a kind of Simon Ledbetter here because he's obviously the marketing guy, he knows far better than I do. But when it comes to doing leaflets, I would do the same 1,000 houses 3 times over 2 or 3 months with the same type of leaflet with slightly different content. So build a story, talk about local house prices or a house that's just sold, or what house prices are doing there versus the rest of the country, or legislation that's just changed, particularly for land, whatever it might be. There's a million different things that you can put in a leaflet that are informative and that go back to this thing about giving to get. So don't say, contact me to sell your home because I'm the best estate agent in this town. Don't do that. You should be giving information and advice, and eventually those people come to you. So leaflets definitely work, even though they're still seen as a bit of old school.
Well, that's what, you referenced him, and if you wanted to learn more about that, then the episode that we did with Simon Ledbetter, he goes into some detail, but I think he says something about the disparity between the number of advertising messages we get online is in the hundreds, if not thousands a day.
I think we see 3,000 a day.
It's something like that. Letters through the door is 1.4 to 1.9 or something. So you can be omni-channel,
put it in an envelope,
digital or traditional.
Put it in a brown envelope so it looks like a bill.
Seriously, they'll open it.
Seriously, so it looks like it's come from the council or something. People will open it.
I want to bring you on to the topic of emu.
Do we have to?
Yes, because actually, when we first met,
it's a long time ago now.
A little bit of a story behind it. So we've got a mutual friend, Nigel. So I used to, I first done a guild conference back in 2013-14 with a business coach that I was working with, and we presented on stage and got some traction and ended up helping other agency clients. Nigel came to the stand that we were on. We got to chat about his business in Essex, successful company, right?
Yeah, very. Yeah.
And we then, for quite a number of years, caught up for dinner every 3-6 months, and he kept coming to these lunches and dinners talking about this guy called Russell from eMove, who's telling him that online estate agency is the only way it's going to end up. Yep. It's going to be that place and no other.
I definitely said that.
You really did say that. And I don't know why I'm leaning into this microphone, but anyway. I used to be on the opposite end. So I'd sit there and Nigel would be in the middle. He's got a very good friend in yourself who's growing a business quite fast from what I could gather. There's me doing really well in my sort of sector with a higher fee model and so on and so forth. Looking back at that period of time, how much of that was just you going a PR route with regards to going against the model that's seen by the industry? And how would you take a step back now? Would you take a completely different view and approach?
No, so at the time, I genuinely believed that agency could change. I'd never said that it would dominate 100% market share.
No.
But I did think at the time, and I said this, that within a period of time, whatever that period was, that online agency could account for 25 to 30% of agency transactions. I genuinely believed that at the time because of the commoditization of everything else that was. Don't forget, this was 2009, right?
Yes.
So when I set that business up, so it lasted 9 years, went bust 5 years ago, 14 years ago that was, just as we started to see the effect of Amazon and Booking.com and the way that the internet was affecting everything. So I think I can be partially forgiven for thinking that automation, that kind of commoditization is probably the best word, that was going to have a significant effect on the way that we did everything, including selling houses, right?
Yeah.
And the same's happened even with things that we never thought would happen via the internet. So, for instance, selling cars, configuring your BMW online, buying a car through Cinch, booking a holiday and paying someone £5,000 over the internet for 3 weeks in whatever. I mean, 20 years ago, most people in an audience would have said, no, we'd never do that. So I was maybe, I wasn't the only one. Obviously, you had Mark Reddings and Graham Locke at House Network, and Adam Day, of course, who's at EXP now, and Hash. We were the kind of first three.
Yeah.
So I'll call us pioneers, if you like. Here's the thing. I genuinely thought that there was room for that model.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be, and thought it could be, let's say 25% market share, and that I could be the leader in that space. Why? Because I then thought I would eventually sell the business to a Connells or a Foxtons, or I'd list it on the stock exchange, which obviously Purplebricks then came along and did exactly that. And that was my check, my meal ticket.
Yeah.
But I definitely, I absolutely believed it up until the year that it went bust. And then I was really questioning the model on the basis that the sector, not just eMove, we weren't growing. We were throwing all of this money at marketing across, particularly House Simple, which then became whatever they're called at the moment, Strike, that's it. And Purplebricks famously, and House Network, and a whole bunch of others, Doorsteps, 99 Home. There were loads and loads of participants, and the sector wasn't growing. So then I started to doubt it. But I think also someone had to try it, didn't they?
Yeah, 100%.
Because otherwise you think, well, yeah, and it might be that it was antagonistic towards the industry at the time. And so, if I'm honest, did I play on the antagonism? God, yes, I did. God, yes, because I knew that being punchy, vocal, controversial would get the message out there.
Yeah.
Particularly, when the PR agency that I hired back in 2009. It was a small PR agency. It wasn't like a big London thing where I had loads of budget. So I had to do a lot of stuff myself. So I think it was worth doing. What do I think now? I mean, I think anyone that's now starting, and we need to be careful about the terminology here, an online estate
Yes,
agency.
we're all online, right?
Yeah. So let's call them cheap fees, upfront fee estate agents or whatever. Probably a better way of saying that. But anyone doing that now is crazy. I mean, the Strike Purplebricks deal is insanity. I mean, Charles Dunstan must have an awful lot of money to burn if he thinks that
it's got to have volume.
Well, no, not even. It doesn't even work at volume. We found
That's what
that the bigger we were, the bigger the losses,
Right.
because the more people we needed, and you can't. Guess what? Look, here's the thing:
Piss them off.
you can't service a client for that 6 months with everything that goes with it, fall throughs and lawyer problems and inefficient conveyances, which I'm sure we can talk about. You can't do that for 600, 700, 800 quid. You need a decent fee.
So if you started today and we talked about the PR side of it, what would be your approach on fees and the kind of market that you would operate in? Is it across the whole market, or would you kind of aim for a particular area, and this is why?
So I still sell a house every now and again. So I think I did 6 or 7 transactions in 2022. I'll do 3 or 4 this year, kind of accidental listings and sales that are kind of, a friend or a neighbour, friend of a friend. I guess I'm a bit long in the tooth on this stuff now. I'm, as I say, nearly 30 years in. I wouldn't sell a 250k flat at 1%. I mean, think about that. Even if you're with a platform where the split is 70-30, think about your hourly rate for that transaction over 6 months. It's a pittance and it's a waste of time. So I would only do stuff now, 7 figures, $1 million plus, where there's a decent fee, 1.5%-ish. That's kind of worthwhile. I don't think I would ever be an estate agent again.
No.
I don't like it. I don't like day-to-day
Why is
estate
that?
agency because of the public. They are wankers.
So we've just turned off. No,
No, but they are. They're over-expectant. They're demanding.
Are they, or is it the agent isn't actually making it clear who they should represent?
Well, I think there's a bit of weakness on the part of agents.
How weak?
So what?
Let's be really honest.
Most agents
How
are very
weak are our agents?
Well,
and that's not being
they're as weak as
antagonistic.
and whatever the percentage is it 99%? Is it 90%? Most agents don't fight for fee.
No.
They don't sell themselves.
So that's a big thing. If you're selling your biggest asset with lots of equity, who do you want to give it to?
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't fight.
Yeah, but I'm not sure the consumer sees it like that.
No, they don't.
Because the trouble is most estate agents don't give the seller a reason to delve into other things. So what happens is they have 3 agents round, and the consumer thinks, well, I haven't sold a house for 9 years. I don't really know what to ask. I'll tell you what Matt, what's your fee? And if you're weak, you'll say either,
The but.
well, oh, I'm normally 1%, but I'll do you a deal because I want the listing. Or I know you've had 2 other people round. What did Bairstows and Foxton say? Oh, they said 1%. Oh, I'll do it for 0.75. That's the conversation.
But that is, and I'm seeing it on LinkedIn all the time. And I was actually at an appointment a couple of weeks back, and the client was, had 4 estate agents, and I was with a guy, and blah blah blah. And I said, no, that's what we are, and by the way, that's fine if you don't see the value. And I think this is where estate agents have got to kind of step up for themselves.
But there's no training.
Well,
no one's training anybody.
They will be, don't you worry.
No, but with some exceptions. Look, you guys, look, we mix in a circle, the 3 of us, with the best and the greatest in the industry, right? So I'm not saying that everybody doesn't do and say the right things, I know. But I'm talking about the majority of 25-year-old agents with a 30-year-old manager that's been in the job 3 years, that works for whoever corporate. They're not properly educated and trained to turn the conversation around and to control the conversation, which is such as to say to the consumer, Mr. Smith, you've asked me what my fee is. Great question. What is it you want out of this transaction?
Yeah.
Or what do you mean? So are you just looking for the agent with the cheapest fee? Because I've got to tell you at the beginning, that's not me. Sorry. Let me tell you why. Yeah. So presumably, Mr. Smith, what you're interested in is the outcome, right? So you're interested in a really good transaction, communication, out of hours, great advice, a proven track record, and the best price for your home. If that's what you want, that probably is me.
But that's
It.
conversation.
That's how you start the conversation.
See, some of the stuff that I took away.
I might go back to being an agent again. That was really good.
Do you know what? We're going to sell that on as training material. Yeah. But I think the average screen time for most adults now is probably 4 or 5 hours a day. So you just think about the reason why people don't do enough training. They always say to me, we just haven't got the time. It's one of the problems we've got.
It's costing them a fortune.
It's costing them an absolute
Can you imagine if every agent in the country could get another 0.5%? What would that do to the bottom line of this industry?
Well,
0.5%.
And what would it do to maybe bringing in even more talent?
Yeah.
And actually,
improving
the service.
Having people going through university thinking, I actually want to be an agent because it's a decent, respectable profession.
Which it is in some of the other places
the US,
that we've
Australia.
been to.
Yeah. And then the other thing, this goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, which is time and patience.
Yeah.
If you build a relationship with your potential sellers through that nurturing database, through sending them content and inviting them to whatever on a regular basis, once you've built that relationship and they like you and trust you, and perhaps they're hearing from friends and whatever that you're good, the conversation around fee becomes much, much easier.
Yeah,
and I say that as an agent, selling a few houses a year as I do, I can't remember the last time that I was in someone's house talking about fee where I had to negotiate on it.
I think it's about mindset, isn't it? Because you'd happily walk away from that fee. If it wasn't worth your time, your hourly rate,
you're not going to do it. But you should do that. But if you're chasing numbers because you've got some regional arsehole in that corporate saying you've got to list 10 a month, I mean, sod that. Why list 10 a month? That regional needs to understand it's not about listing, it's about completions and revenue per completion, right? So, but if you take your time, and to your point, if you every now and again you say, this listing isn't for me, I bet you 9 times out of 10 the consumer says, well, hang on a sec, what do you mean?
What do you mean?
Well, I think there's a mismatch.
You're getting rejection.
What you want is the most for your property, and this is another thing that's a problem at the moment, overvaluing, giving in, being weak to the consumer. So you want maximum price for your property, and actually you want to overprice it. You only want to sign a 3-week sole agency agreement. You want to pay me 0.5%. Thanks very much. It was great to meet you. It's just got to go.
Well, we go out, and most agents, how many hours? Let's take a premium valuation. How many hours are you giving to that consumer, that customer? Pre, during, and after. What are we talking? 3-4 hours?
Yeah.
Okay. And the thing I would say to any agent out there listening is the one thing, because you get occasionally asked, do you charge for evaluation? No, we don't. But the one thing you should insist on is feedback.
Yeah.
The one thing you should say, the only thing I'm going to need from you at the end of the process, whether you use me or not, is I would love your honest feedback, because we are getting better.
Tell me what I could have done differently.
Client by client, we're going to improve. So I need your feedback. It's the only thing I need from you. Now imagine how quickly you would improve with that feedback. Now, some of that feedback is going to be really good. It's going to float your boat, give your ego a little tickle, and some of it's going to be hard to hear. But what one's going to make you better?
The best way to get there is get somebody else to ask the vendor, not you. If you're on the appointment, it's got to be somebody else.
I think it's how you pre-frame it as well. So I think if I'm going out to see Mr. and Mrs. Quirk, I'll be saying, look, guys, this is what I'm going to do before, during, and after. The only thing I ask from you is just honesty, because that's the principle that I run my business on. So I want you to tell me why you won't go with me, why you think I'm not the right fit for you. And equally, I want to be able to say that to you as well, just in case it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So when you're meeting and greeting that customer and you're having that relationship, you've already hit the relationship button straight away. Because I think if I was to start Gigs & Co today, it's not a volume model. It's a model that's going to work with a particular area in the market. We're going to deliver a particular service, and we are not going to negotiate on fees. No mates rates. If my friends are my friends...
But you know what, Matt? That makes it so much easier.
My friends are my friends.
Our fees are our fees.
You are going to come to me if you really want to back me and use me, and you'll get to pay it as an investment at the end of the transaction. That's it. If you don't support me,
and the other thing that works, and you can do this as a self-employed agent, so whoever you're with, whichever platform, is to say, I only have the capacity to deal with a certain amount of clients at any one time. So you're almost saying, look, I can't deal with 15 at 0.5%. I can only deal with a smaller number. And that therefore this has to kind of, no disrespect, I'm kind of interviewing you a little bit as well. You wouldn't perhaps say it like that, but this has to work for me.
You're the kind of customer I would want to work with.
So my last listing, and again, I'm not really an agent anymore, was a house in Coxley Green Road, Brentwood, that was referred to me by somebody and said, look, can you deal with it? Rather than giving it away to one of your mates, whatever. So I listed that house at £1.3 million. We've sold it only a few days ago, 1.5%, which in Essex, believe me, ain't bad. There will be people in Essex right now that believe that they can only get 0.75. 0.8, 0.9. They've conditioned themselves in terms of mindset.
Yes.
I got 1.5%. She didn't even blink. No. She just signed up. That's a £20,000.
It's incredible, isn't it? And there's an author that we sometimes talk about on here, and we talked about with Simon Hawksley's podcast came out the other day, called Daniel Priestley. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's got a book I'd recommend anybody reads called Oversubscribed, and it talks exactly about that principle, where you'd have
scarcity.
You say, okay, how many customers can I delight, and pick a number. And then anything above those become a waiting list.
That principle around fees. So, for example, you're talking about 1.5%. What's the average price reduction? You can call it a change of strategy. What's the average percentage price reduction today in the current climate? What would you say as a guess?
Well, about a third, at least a third of properties have always been reduced before they've sold, let alone in the market right now. And I don't know, a 5% reduction.
So let's say 5%. So someone's just taken 5% off the value of their house from one conversation.
Yeah.
And that is where your value is.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we've got to get better as an industry at saying no. But let me explain why. Let me ask you a question.
But we do, and people watching this hopefully will be inspired to do that. I had a conversation with
an agent. The majority won't, right?
What?
They won't want to. They won't want to have that difficult conversation.
But then they sit there moaning that it's quiet. So an agent said to me genuinely only a few days ago, so how's it going? They said, well, your listings are great. Listing left, right and centre. But they're all coming on at the seller's price. And I went, why? He went, well, that's the price they want. So we'd fucking turn them away then.
Absolutely.
Sorry. But why on earth would you just take... So if you know something's 50 grand too much, you're never going to sell it because of the current market. Why would you take that listing on? And actually, why would you not sit there and have a very, very frank and honest conversation with data, with comparables,
Absolutely.
where you say, I hear you, it's just not the same market as it was a year ago. And actually, even a year ago, the best house on your road that's just as nice as yours is a bit nicer, of course, sold for X. Just be honest. I think sellers genuinely expect and kind of favour someone that's going to be an expert, a professional, someone that's going to give them honest advice.
Direct, honest, transparent. So let's just have a look. If you're watching this now and you're listening to this debate, I ask you a question. If you were selling your home, who would you use and why? And take away the industry kind of answers that you're going to kind of come up with. Just think about your asset. Think about your home, your wife, your family, your partner, whoever. Who would you want to give that to represent you and your equity? Just think about that. Is it someone who turns around and says, okay, it's 1.5%, but, or somebody who's coming in trying to be the lowest and coming up with the highest value?
Or someone that turns up with a load of pie charts and says, we're the biggest, we're the best. And let me just go through my presenter. No, I don't want you to. No, I've got to go through it. Sorry.
At gigs, and this is really hard. I don't admit this very often, but this is probably still my issue. I need to go to a therapist again. But I decided to give up market share about 18 months ago. Because we've done it, we've carried that can for such a long time, it's become a noose. Now,
Yeah, but who cares?
well, that's the
your
point.
bank manager doesn't care about your
No,
market
of course
share.
not. But what I'm on about is what we were doing is you become a slave to your business.
It's ego.
It's
Matt,
ego.
It's what it is, ego.
100% ego. Can I just take you back to something? The first time we met was at the XP event that he was holding with the chap that come over.
Oh, Glenn, the
Glenn.
CEO, and there
So
was
you and I
Peter
sat
Rollins
opposite each
and
other. We had a
Ian
really
McKenzie.
good, really cracking night. In fact,
Sushi
it's
Samba, very
that's what
expensive for them.
inspired.
Yeah.
That's what inspired our round table
Yeah.
at the 8 Club, which we done at the end of last year. Again, at our own expense,
Yeah.
because we took away lots of conversation that night. We thought this would have been brilliant to record. And you talk about ego. Dropping your ego is one of the first parts to understanding your own growth. And I really, I hadn't met you up until that point. So all I knew is from what Nigel was telling me over the years, which was this guy, Jesus Christ, he's taken our market down, But actually when I met you, you were very kind of like, okay, yeah, that was where I was at the time. And you took real responsibility for, not apologetically, because I think you were right to go at something that you believed in, but also to acknowledge that actually it was just the wrong approach. And I think for me, that's where a lot of us need to look at ourselves in the mirror in our industry. Actually go, are we taking the right approach to this
But don't you think
market?
that a lot of agents have used eMove and Purplebricks as an excuse as to why they
Why
don't
they're
get a
crap.
great fee?
Yeah.
It's, I can't because those online agents. Well, hang on. Online agents have only ever had a 6 or 7% market share. So we were never successful in such a way and to such an extent as to be a true threat to you in the living room talking about fee.
But you have to take responsibility. You have to look it in the mirror. And that's where we all need to look right now. And why aren't we winning enough business or going up the right market or winning enough fees?
So I wanted to ask you a question that was kind of related to everything that we've spoken about so far, from a PR point of view, from a premium property point of view, to a controversy point of view. And funny enough, it's mindset. Mindset is something that keeps coming up when we have conversations with guests like yourselves as well. And I suppose my question for you specifically is around controversy, because I think that you seek controversy.
No. David, how could you
Not even
possibly
looking.
say
I
that?
know.
And you know the expression on Russell's face. But with that comes, in some way, shape or form, must come flack in the form of comments or internet trolls or something, or there's going to be people that are going to make, you're putting yourself out there, but you're putting yourself out there in, so I suspect comes the first thing we said about PR is there might be an element of people not wanting to put themselves out there, a bit of a fear of that, understandable. But you've gone past that on lots of different levels, and now you're putting yourself out there, but putting yourself out there in a way to sometimes antagonize the industry or others. So how, from a mindset point of view, that's quite an extreme place to be, especially compared to the rest of the industry. How do you, just to sum it up in one word, how do you manage that mindset? How does that...
So this is going to be my therapy session now, isn't it? Right, okay. So let's be really frank and honest about kind of that approach, that persona, if you like, because it is a bit complex, right, if you're ready for this. So first of all, having a PR agency or doing PR definitely doesn't mean that you have to be controversial, right? You don't have to be. I've chosen to take it to a different level because that's just more me, I suppose. And it's almost a bit of a shortcut. Whilst it's true that you don't have to be controversial, most PR things, if you're doing kind of blatant gratuitous PR, back to the conversation we had just now about stunts, there needs to be some kind of hook, right? So for me, the hook is kind of, controversy, I suppose. For some people, it's humor. For some people, it's just doing something crazy, whatever it might be. But the reason that I started off being controversial is because I'm one of these people that I'm afraid does genuinely have to speak their mind. So here's the thing I've never told anybody before. My dad was an estate agent back in the 70s and 80s. My dad's dad was an estate agent. So that's not the bit that's the revelation, because I've said that a lot. So my grandfather, my dad, and my dad's brothers were all estate agents. My dad, who passed away about 5 years ago now, hated controversy. He couldn't fire anyone. He couldn't tell anyone off. He was, I don't want to use the word weak because that sounds kind of disrespectful to my old man, but he wasn't good at controversy.
Did he want to be liked?
Yeah, I guess he did. But because I grew up in business with, watching him and my uncles and my granddad, it really irritated me because I saw people taking advantage of him. So I think I started to go a bit more the other way. And as my wife would explain, and my kids, when I end up in a situation in real life, in business or whatever, I can't not say something. I just can't. You know, if I'm wronged in a shop or in an airline queue to get onto a plane or in a car dealership, it's not that I want to shout and scream and, you know, be aggressive, but I have to make that person realise that wasn't good. That wasn't good enough. That's not on.
So you do it for the right reasons, right?
So I do it all the time. So does it get me into trouble? Yeah, it definitely does. And particularly in the industry, where I say things like, I think generally UK estate agents aren't very good and they're lazy, right? I believe that to be true because it's borne out by the fucking evidence, right? That's exactly what the evidence shows us, particularly if you take UK versus US versus Australia when it comes to, you know, service levels, perception by the consumer of the industry, fees, whatever. So I think but then I also have this kind of wicked dry sense of humour. So think about me kind of almost kind of not wanting to be trampled all over like my dad was often in business. Yeah. Then think about the fact that I've just got this hankering to have to say something. Then couple that with a sense of humour where sometimes I'm quite happy to throw a grenade, and yes, it might cause a bit of controversy and people might just say, oh, I can't believe you said that. But it can be, to me at least, very funny. You know, I don't know if you saw, I got banned from Twitter recently.
I did see this, yeah.
I got banned.
What did you say?
What was it for?
I was taking the piss out of a load of lefties that were slagging off landlords. I was absolutely rinsing them because I did a show at the... I did a thing for the National Investment Landlord Show, right, for Steve there, where I hosted a panel of landlord-type experts with an audience of landlords, and we talked a lot about all sorts of different things. Lo and behold, outside later on, there was a protest by a load of tenancy groups, a load of tenant activists, and they had cameras there, they had Politics Joe there, Novara Media, all this left-leaning media stuff. And later on social media, or Twitter in particular, I noticed that these left-wing media outlets had completely skewed what happened in that conference and outside. And they'd interviewed a load of landlords and taken a load of out-of-context sound bites. They'd really been really out of order, really. So, of course, I jump in on Twitter and just say, well, actually, if you'd been in the event and actually watched the panels and then spoken to other people, you would have seen that actually it was a very fair and balanced conversation about, actually we did talk a lot about what to do about vulnerable tenants and so on. But you chose not to do that. And then I said, this apparently was the controversial thing, if you ostracise landlords to the extent that they leave the sector, don't be surprised when there's no stock for tenants to choose from, and therefore lack of choice and rents will go up.
Which it has done.
Exactly what happened in Berlin with rent controls and so on. Let me just say the pile-on from the left was absolutely incredible. I mean, hundreds of these unwashed, swampy types slagging me off on Twitter left, right and centre. So, back to the point that I'm making in a very long-winded way here, David, sorry.
Well, I remember that morning, Simon Whale wrote something that really made me laugh. What a beautiful morning. The birds are tweeting, Russell Quirk is not. And I think it was an accidental haiku poem.
But I took that, so I wanted to make the point. I couldn't take it lying down. I was defending landlords and letting agents. And I don't know, did I go a bit too far? I don't know. I mean, I referred to one guy as looking like Keir Starmer's granddad because he looked a bit, because he looked a bit like that in his bio. He did, right? That's how he looked. So I got a bit personal because they were getting personal. They were throwing things at me on Twitter, pictures of guillotines. You know, landlords should be put up against a wall. All landlords should be executed and all this. So I'm kind of defending the industry. And then what happened was, because I guess I was having a great time making myself laugh by going back with jibes and insults, Twitter decided that despite the fact that they're saying that landlords should all be executed, my banter was apparently a bridge too far, and so they banned me. But I don't regret it because I had a great time for about 2 or 3 hours that morning taking the piss out of a load of illogical, blinkered idiots that didn't want to listen to the fact that they were effectively voting to shoot themselves in the foot as tenants.
So take either that debacle or anything else that you might get involved in or stuck into. Does it ever, so you said you almost seek you've got a high tolerance for conflict, I suppose, in this, and that you want to speak your mind.
And on principle.
And
I'm ridiculously principled.
And
see that.
Does it ever bother you? And if it does ever bother you, what do you do about it?
I'm just trying to think of an instance where it's genuinely...
That probably answers the question, I think.
Don't think so. You know, because I'm not extreme in my views. You know, I'm very socially liberal, so I don't think I would ever be in a position where I'd say something. Because obviously I do a lot of political commentary now, not just property. You know, so I talk about immigration, trans issues, all sorts of stuff. And I don't say anything that I think is extreme. So therefore I don't say anything that I should be ashamed of. So no, I don't think so. I can't honestly think of an instance. I suppose, look, if a load of clients said to me, "Oh, you know, that was a bit much," you know, maybe that would bother me a little bit, I suppose. But I also believe very, very strongly, apart from just being principled, I really believe very strongly in freedom of speech.
Well, that's what
So you can catch Russell on Threads, not on Twitter. From now,
No,
are you
I'm
on
back.
Threads?
No, I'm back.
Oh, you're back.
Because the ridiculous thing about Twitter is that, I mean, most of us have got business accounts and all sorts of different accounts going on. I had an old account that has sat there almost dormant, and I just converted that into my new account. It's now It's Russell Quirk, and I've got 1,000 followers, and I'm back.
I'm back, baby.
Yeah. So it's pathetic, isn't it? That you can get banned, but then
Can I
literally
take
30 seconds later start again.
Can I take something away from this? What you're saying is principally, you give your thoughts, your beliefs,
Yeah.
you share.
And there's not
them.
enough of that in the industry.
Right. That's where I was going. And actually, how many agents at the moment are really sharing the information, their experience, the knowledge, the facts that are going to help their customer make the right decision right
Well,
now?
let me ask a similar question. How many people are there that we would see as thought leaders in the industry that are creating conversation and debate with opinion pieces, LinkedIn posts? I don't mean, you know, bitching or slagging off. I mean, genuinely talking about how to improve fees, how to improve the perception of the estate agency industry in this country. What do we do about licensing? I genuinely try to do that. And the trouble is, of course, I then also have views on those things. And sometimes I think we need to accept that we're not very good as an industry. We need to kind of get out of our own way. That's the controversy bit, I suppose, which people get pissed off with me for saying. But you kind of, there's no sense in sugarcoating the industry. We are an industry that is hated by the public and charges a really low fee. So I'm right, aren't I? On the basis that could be, those two things could be better.
Same people are in the market moaning about fees.
Yeah, it's their own
And
fault.
so they're what they're actually doing is they're not actually
Yeah,
helping
yeah,
this change, the situation change. So I'm with you on that, and I think controversy can be dressed up in all sorts of things. But if it's being honest and sharing what you really think, is that really that controversial?
I could argue, yeah, it's not controversy. It's not me being controversial. It's me being a rarity where I'm principled and I speak my mind.
So being a rarity and being different is something that all estate agents tell everybody that they are.
But they're not, are they?
But they're not.
Apart from the pie charts,
No, even a pie
which no one gives a shit about.
No.
Yeah.
So I think
They're not really.
there's a lot to take away from this.
It's
which
what
is-
Richard Rawlings used to call the red agent, the blue agent, the green agent, the yellow agent. Who cares? What's the difference? Well, it's up to you to show your differentiation. You know, we're 24/7. You know, we achieve 98% of asking price rather than the average of 95%. Or, you know, can I introduce you to two people that have sold? I mean, how many agents do this? Can I introduce you to a couple of people that have sold through me recently? They're not friends, they're genuine customers. Maybe you'd like to speak to them, see what their experience was like. Oh, really? Or no one else has suggested that. Why the hell not? If you're good, why would you not offer up an example, a case study of someone that's just sold up the road that got a great price, had a brilliant experience?
Suggestion.
And I think there's an elephant in the room with a estate agency, which is how many estate agents actually sell a property, actually know how to sell a property. There's or do they rely?
You're going back in time, right? This is pre the market. I mean, forget now, but the market as it's been for the last 6, 7, 8 years has been a seller's market. List it, stick it on Rightmove, make sure the pictures are kind of legible, and you sell. That's not agency.
No,
that's not the agency I know from the 80s and 90s.
That market is still, it's the selling piece is kind of done, but it's the value piece.
But what about
isn't it?
chain building?
Absolutely.
You know, what about spinning viewers into valuations and listings? You know, that just doesn't happen. I think particularly those perhaps under 26, 27, 28 years old of age, they probably don't know old
But it's
agency.
not their fault.
No, it's not their fault. I'm not saying it's their fault. No,
I know you're not,
not.
but that comes back to what we were saying earlier.
But where are the 40, 50-year-old managers, regional directors and business owners that remember what it's like to have to nick $5,000 from every property up the chain to keep it in place? Or, you know, having, we're back to this now, reduction afternoons. Remember that? Every neg on the phone, you're going to make 20 calls each. You just get 5 or 6 reductions. They've got to be at least 5%. I mean, you've got to be doing that now, right? If you're not doing that, you're basically you're stuffed, right? You're not going to sell anything.
And there's a more subtle and transparent conversation that can be had. And if you have the training that you were referring to earlier, I think a lot of these 25, 26-year-olds would stay in the industry, because I think people leave the industry because they're being shown how not to do it. Because ultimately what they're trying to do is manipulate situations and try and, you've got to go and, pick up the phone. I need you to go and phone that house up. That doesn't really happen anyway. But if you did and you actually gave value and you helped people, understood needs, it's a much better, much more fun job to do, because you're actually giving one of your own needs. A lot of people want to be in it because they want to help people.
But
right?
I think there's also, and I don't know if we've got time to talk about this, but then there's the fact that 99% of agents are working for somebody on a 10 to 15 grand basic, and they're taking between 5 and 10% of the deal, which is ridiculous. I think the way forward, and again, with no agenda, I don't care what people do in terms of where they work, but surely if you're a good agent and you can get out of bed in the morning, you can back yourself, you can lead gen, and you're disciplined, why would you not want to be self-employed and take 70% of the commission?
But you said, and we've talked about people having that level of motivation, that level of mindset in terms of, and when we're talking about mindset, I think a lot of it's distorted because people think they have to do it in a certain way which has been prescribed to them. If you was to come and work with me today, I wouldn't be saying this is how you do it. I think we're leveling on to some of the things that we should be doing, which is becoming someone to be proud of in the marketplace that you work in. In other words, you've got your finger on the pulse, you've got the knowledge, the experience, the confidence to go and say no, to hold your commission, to add value, to show value, to prove, to demonstrate, rather than to capitulate, which is what a lot of it's been born from.
But look, show knowledge and experience, be confident, but also have a process and stick to it.
Absolutely.
Don't just wake up and think, I don't know what I'm doing today. There should be certain things you do every day, right? So whether it's door knocking, which I know we talked about people don't want to do, or whether it's
if that's the
following
thing that
people
you
up.
do well, then do it.
In my PR business, I spend a large proportion of my time following up people that I spoke to a week, a year, 3 years ago even, to try to nurture them back to ultimately be a PR client. I spend a lot of my time doing that in lots and lots of different creative ways. We need to do that as agents when it comes to people that have inquired, people that have had a valuation and either went on the market or didn't, people that were viewers with a house to sell. I bet if I asked 100 agents genuinely how many have been through their last month's viewers with a house to sell and followed them up to see if they can book a valuation, I bet one hand would go up if that. Honestly.
Tell me, I'm with you on that. I'm kind of close to the ground. I'm listening to business owners who I mentor, and some of the challenges that they think they've got.
Yeah, but that stuff transforms your business.
It really is. It's actionable behaviours. Just coming back out just for a second to the premium market, the luxury market, there's a lot of people that are in that space now. A lot of people coming into it new, fresh. I think I touched on it earlier about the what can you earn mentality. You can earn £100,000, £200,000, but realistically, what percentage are actually coming in and breaking those kind of records? And do you think that the new approach, the social media approach to getting traction, is a driver for that success?
Look, social media I think is really important, but it's definitely not the only thing. I think if there's an agent that thinks they're the next Daniel Daggers just because you've got 150,000 Instagram followers and that's going to do it, social media is just a supplement. It's just your window. You've still got to do all the other hard graft stuff, as in lead gen, lead nurture, door knocking, leaflets, and so on, and treat people in such a way as they actually want to refer and recommend you. So social. I mean, we're all consumed by social media. I mean,
we are.
I definitely am. It's a big part of my business, big part of where I get my news from, and so on. But yeah, it really isn't the only thing. So I think if agents think that setting up on your own and just being on Instagram is then going to somehow drive valuations and conversions into listings, that's not going to happen.
Well, I said to David before we came on air, I'd done a bit of TikToking yesterday. I was on there. I wasn't dancing, by the way, so you don't have to worry about that, or even singing. But I started to connect up with people because I've shared some videos on there, but not massively on there enough. But I connected up with UK kind of luxury agents, premium agents, and I was looking up and down their profiles, looking at some of the videos, and there's a lot of guys that have been in the job very 5 minutes. Some it's their first day, some it's a day in the life of being a high-end estate agent. And when I was looking at a day in their life, it's very different than the day that I would be having in the
Yeah,
industry.
but it's fabricated, isn't it?
So tell me, what would be your day of the life if you were a premium agent today? What kind of things would we expect Russell to be doing?
Oh God! Well,
I know you don't want to do it.
Well, no, yeah, I don't really want to be an agent anymore. So it's difficult, but I think just have a process. So, I mean, the first thing I'd do, I'd have a small area. So I think, again, the ego thing dictates that as an agent, in my hometown of Brentwood, you think, right, I'm going to do Brentwood, Billericay, Ingatestone, and Hornchurch. Oh, great.
Mistake,
okay.
Right?
You try covering that, right, if you're going to do it properly, because you need to make a name for yourself. So we're back to personal brand. I would do everything I needed to do through PR, social media, leaflets, events, networking, and so on to start to build that personal brand. But I would also realise that's going to take me a year easily. So I'll do a bit of business in the meantime, and I'll go to, this is the other thing people don't do. This thing here is a really powerful tool. I don't just mean for TikTok and Instagram. If you know 300 or 400 people, guaranteed that if you send them all a message, and a nice bespoke one, either as an email or a WhatsApp, either your friends or your friends' friends or your friends' relatives, on the basis that about 7% of all homes are on the market at any one time, 7% of 300 is 21 people. So that's 21 opportunities in here. Now, like door knocking, most people are really scared of going into their own contact book. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? I don't want my mates from school to go, oh, right, okay, yeah, you're an estate agent now, or you're working for yourself. It's all a bit kind of sappy, isn't it? Well, you've got to get over that, get over yourself. So I would do that, which is exactly what I did when I started at Keller Williams, when I first invested in that business. Another story. Let's not go there.
Part 2.
In fact, I'm not allowed to go there.
No, you're okay.
So, but I did okay. So I think, doing those things is really, really, really important, and just building up presence, brand, and then but doing it all the time. Nurturing people on a kind of daily, weekly basis, and being seen and be visible, and just expecting to have patience, and not that it's going to turn into something. You're not going to earn 100 grand in your first year.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you value a home and list it today, we all know in this market it could take you 2 or 3 months to sell it. Maybe it needs a couple of price reductions. Conveyancing being what it is, because they're all really shit. You're going to end up with probably a 4, 5, 6 months transaction. So what you list today, you're probably not going to see the money to what? March, April next year, let's be honest. So managing your own expectations, I think, is what I'd be doing.
And the last question for me, and then we'll leave you in peace, but something that I'm interested in, and maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but is there anything that you've taken, because you've had lots of interesting new experiences being on TV and presenting, and being on radio and presenting. Is there anything that you've learned from doing that? Because I guess that's been a bit of a cold shower in terms of what to do and how to get your head around it and everything. Is there anything that you've taken from that you think actually that's really applicable in estate agency? And I know that's not a world you necessarily want to be in, but the things you think of, actually, yeah, I've learned X, Y, Z from doing that and understanding it, that's something that could be really valuable in an estate agency, or is it just too far apart?
No, I think there's a comfort zone answer to that, I think, which is, even at my age, I'm 55 now, I still push myself outside my comfort zone, which I think most people in their 40s and 50s just don't do.
Yeah.
So the first time I did a TV show, so not just an appearance as a commentator, but when I'd nagged the boss at Talk TV so many times in the corridor, give us a show. I'll do a stand-in. I'll do the 5 a.m. thing.
For you to host a show yourself.
Host a show, right? Yeah. So, and studio, backdrop, camera, microphone, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's you, right? Now you have to speak and perform. You absolutely shit yourself. No, you do. So what I learned was, try and manage your nerves, because look, you could crumble, you could choke. I mean, we've all seen plenty of people do that when they start public speaking. So it allows you to kind of manage that, I suppose. And I think that translates into agency, in that we go back to the confidence, the boldness thing, being confident in your ability, being able to say to a seller across the table in the kitchen, look, I'm 2%, and that's what I am, because I'm worth that, and I can talk to you all day long as to why I am. So I think it's all about comfort zones, pushing yourself, and kind of showing confidence, and I guess that's kind of how it translates. But it was a scary thing, believe me. I've done 12 solo shows for Talk TV now.
But I remember you telling me about it. With you had constantly someone in your ear.
Oh yeah,
trying to think about what you're going to say,
because there's no auto cue, right? So I mean, GB News is auto cue, so a lot of what they say. But Talk TV is there's most of the presenters, particularly those during the day, there's no script where you write it the day before between you, or you just sit there reading it. That doesn't happen. So I remember doing a 5 a.m. show, and it was a Saturday. And of course, 5 a.m. on a Saturday, you're not going to get that many guests. You're not going to get an MP or a captain of industry come onto the show at 5:15 to be a guest in the morning. So the producers say to you, look, you'll have to kind of fill for that half hour. Now, I can talk, as you can see. Try talking at a camera for half an hour with one break for 3 minutes. It's really hard, really hard. But I was determined to do it, to conquer it. And has it helped me now even more, God forbid, with confidence? And, now when I walk onto the set of Jeremy Kyle every now and again, am I nervous? Yeah, still a little bit, but I'm not crapping myself. I'm not going to collapse. I'm not going to choke. And it's all good stuff. And I think it's the same with agency. It's the same with it being in any sales. You just push yourself.
Well, I think but I think sometimes people don't understand where and how. So I think your story there is really inspiring, because there's a lot of people, you get to a certain stage in life when they just stop taking themselves out of the comfort zone.
And for some people, it's a marathon or it's an Ironman or whatever. It's for me, it's can I hold down a 2 to 3 hour TV show? Albeit at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning, when you could laugh and go, there's only about 100 people watching. Yeah, well, so what? But where does then the next thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I say to an agent who I've said to plenty of agents recently, I said the first thing is to hold your commission. That's one way of getting out of your comfort zone, because you don't do it enough, and you've told me that, so I know that you don't.
Yeah.
The other thing is having a difficult conversation. How many difficult conversations did you have yesterday? And if they can't name one, they aren't having them. So how many can you have in a day? And then they come up with like 10 or 15. I'm like, no. Just have 1 or 2. Let's get good at the difficult conversations. And that takes them. So what are you going to do? I'm going to speak to them on the phone. No. Can't see him.
Can't see him. Face to face.
Yeah. Have those conversations that are needed right now. And the difference that you make, if I look at 60 or 70% of our sales that we're agreeing in the last few months, I can guarantee have changed the strategy in the first 4 or 6 weeks of marketing.
Yeah.
So look, Russell, we'll finish there, but thank you so much for coming on today.
Pleasure.
And
cheers, buddy.
I think we've had the king of controversy. We've had a bit of controversy, but not too much. It's been
not too bad. I don't think I've defamed anyone, or if you want to carry on, I can.
There's a few seconds left. We'll get some slander in, shall we?
We'll do that in the pub. Actually, don't, because we want to bring more guests on. Thank you.
But Russell, thank you so much for coming on today. There's been so much that I know that I've got out of this, from a PR point of view, from a premium property point of view, from a mindset point of view. So thank you. And if you've listened or watched us today, thank you as well for taking the time to do so. We hope you've got as much out of this as we have. I think it's been absolutely fantastic.
Definitely.
If you have, then consider liking, following, subscribing, downloading, all those sorts of things. And until then, we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.